Hi there, and thank you for joining me in this third part of the mindset workshops. And hopefully you're starting to notice some positive effects if you had started the gratitude journal that I suggested in the previous workshop. Certainly not too late to start that if you haven't done that already. And the last two workshops in this mindset series are going to focus on growth mindset. Carol Dweck is a social psychologist at Stanford, and she is the one that pioneered this concept of the fixed versus the growth mindset under the general premise that our ability is not necessarily as fixed as we assume it to be. While it's important not to discount the relevance of our innate talents or training that we have access to, our resources, whether that is financial in nature or even looking at the amount of the type of social support that we have, all of those things play a really vital role in our success. But so often it's our mind or our thoughts that can get in the way of our true potential. Unless you're a track or cross country athlete, you may never have heard of Roger Bannister before. But prior to 1954, no one had really heard of him either, right? And no one had actually ever been able to run a 4-minute mile before that time period. And a lot of this is connected with expectations. High-level athletes and coaches thought this wasn't likely. Societal expectations were very low. Even physicians came out and said that this was physiologically impossible, right? Just that even, with the high-level training, natural talent, all these other things that go into success, that the body has limits. And then along came Roger Bannister, and he was the first individual to break the 4-minute mile back in 1954. He didn't have some secret nutrition or training plan. He didn't have some expert level coach that no one else had access to. He was also very aware of all of the expectations that were out there, but he chose not to let these expectations dictate what he was capable of. And what's even more fascinating than this monumental achievement is that over the next 3 years, 16 athletes were also able to break that 4-minute mile barrier. And now I think the world record is something close to 3:43, right? So it's been shattered at this point. So all of a sudden, other athletes saw what was possible when Roger Bannister was able to achieve this. And so it was this idea of the mind suddenly becoming more open, accepting that this can happen, and then the body followed along very quickly from here. I'm not suggesting that any of us can run a 4-minute mile simply by really thinking that we can, or that you can earn an A in a class or get into your grad school of choice just by really wanting it, or simply by believing in yourself. But I hope that you can see the way that we tend to underestimate our capabilities and how easily this can be tied to what other people are telling us, whether we know those people or don't. I want to just briefly highlight the main distinctions between the fixed and the growth mindset. When individuals are practicing this fixed mindset, we tend to be very outcome oriented as opposed to focusing more on the process of achieving our goals. And when we look at failure or obstacles, these things tend to derail us from our goals or even stop us from trying to pursuing things up front. We don't see the value in effort. It's very difficult for people who are experiencing a fixed mindset to process feedback, especially if there's any kind of critique involved. If there are other people that are achieving things, that makes you feel less capable of achieving your own goals. Billy Beane is a great example when he was an athlete of someone who really unfortunately experienced this fixed mindset. And you may be familiar with him from the movie Moneyball. But he had an incredible amount of talent, was a first-round draft pick, but ended up really not living up to his potential. It surprised a lot of people when he was made it to the professional leagues. And he was one where he exhibited a lot of these symptoms of the fixed mindset. He hated to fail because he didn't know how to deal with it. He fell apart after every at-bat that didn't go well. He thought he should never make an out. So had some very unrealistic goals there. ended up becoming something that he feared because of potential humiliation, right, that he had kind of created in his mind. He did not like to ask for help. He felt that that admitted weakness, was not interested in addressing any type of deficiency, right? And so you could see a very different type of mindset there than like the story of Roger Bannister, right, where he was certainly looking at failure and obstacles and what other people were doing in a very different way. And so here you'll see some of the distinctions when we look at the characteristics of the growth mindset. Failure seen very differently from the fixed mindset. So it's not that failure is exciting or feels good at first, but because you buy into the influence of effort and what's in your control, when you experience failure or an obstacle, it doesn't leave you incapacitated. Individuals with the growth mindset are always trying to improve. They are adjusting goals if needed. They often will surround themselves with skilled people to try and learn from them. They actually believe this will bring the best out of them. And when someone is giving them feedback, and so here's just an example if you're looking at a coach, right? The idea that, okay, I'm really going to hear this feedback, right? And it isn't necessarily debilitating, even if there's a critique in there. It's meant to try and bring that potential out of you, right? To try and make you feel better. So what I'd like to have you do for the reflection activity in this workshop is think about some examples of when you might have used a fixed mindset during the last semester. And so you may have thought that there was no way you could be successful as a remote learner, and I will guarantee you that there are many professors who had these thoughts as well about our own abilities to teach in this setting, right? So think about some of the specific obstacles that you had and how you dealt with them. And this more than likely will connect to the activity from the first workshop when you were thinking about some of your demands and sources of stress. And so thinking about if you were struggling, did you attend a professor's office hours or email them or reach out to a classmate, right? Or did you kind of just assume, oh, well, there's nothing I could do about this? If you noticed your sleep habits were not productive, were you able to make a change or did you assume there was nothing you could do? How did you handle professor feedback? If you had a setback, did you carry it with you, right? Did you let it define you and so that it then impacted other work that you had as you went on through the semester? And as you're doing this, really trying to think about avoiding attaching judgment to your observations. It isn't, this activity isn't meant to make you feel bad about what you did, right? But it's really important to recognize and hear this voice that represents the fixed mindset so that then you can be able to separate it out from your authentic voice, right? So I'm certainly not suggesting that you had the fixed mindset with every single struggle that you had in the spring. Certainly not the case, right? But it's this idea of owning it, becoming aware of it, and then that really helps it become a lot easier for us to move past it quicker. And so in the next workshop, we'll focus on how to build confidence from these experiences and move forward to the next semester in a productive way by really being able to utilize this growth mindset.